Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and thanks a lot for swinging by the channel and spending a little time with me today. Always grateful for that. And guys, today we're going to be talking about what I consider the top 3 flipping and pitching baits of all time. There's a ton of them out there, but I've got 3 that stand head and shoulders above all of them. And I doubt very seriously if anyone out there can guess what all 3 of these are, but we're going to go over them in today's video. Going to give you guys some tips and advice on when they work the best, and hopefully it'll help you guys catch some hogs out there. Also guys, quick reminder, I just want to invite everybody to consider becoming a channel member of Intuitive Angling here. If you want to support the channel, some of the best ways you can do it is like subscribing, becoming a channel member. Channel members get extra videos every week that are not seen by the public and some access to my personal email address. So if you're interested, just go to my YouTube homepage here and you'll see a little thing that says join on the homepage. Just hit that for information. So much appreciated on that. Okay, guys, out of all them, I've won close to $2 million in my career fishing between Bassmaster FLW, which is now MLF, and some regional circuits, different Central Pro-Ams, just everything I fished, close to $2 million. And I bet probably over half of that winnings have came pitching and flipping with some of the baits I'm going to talk about here in today's video. Now, there's been I always like to preface these videos a little bit to sort of give you guys some history. There's been an explosion of options and diversity in different type of flipping baits, particularly over the last 10 or 15 years. But back when I first started my flipping and pitching, when I first started mastering it back in the 80s and 90s, we were pretty much relegated to, I fished jigs most all the time. I mean, that was my primary staple for probably 20 years, because aside from jigs, we had plastic worms, and then you had some rudimentary craws that people fished, all that type of stuff. But there wasn't a lot of options out there. We didn't have creature baits like, beavers or brush hogs or, rage craws or anything like that. It was pretty much jigs and some plastic worms and that type of deal. But ever since, more manufacturers came along, it's overwhelming how many different flipping and pitching baits are out there, and they all can work at different times, better than others. So a lot of times, like if you go to the tackle warehouse side and try to pick out some baits to go pitching and flipping with, it's like, it could take you all day long to find everything that's out there. So I'm going to sort of simplify it a little bit for you guys in today's video. Now, I've narrowed it down to 3 here that I'm going to talk about, and I've got 2 there's a lot of it has to do, guys, with the type of cover that you're fishing. That's for another video. I mean, we could talk, for hours on this, but I want to give you my 3 favorite flipping and pitching baits. 2 of them are for heavier type cover, and the third one is for a little bit more sparser cover. So the first one we'll talk about, which is one of my favorites of all time, is just the tube. Tube it's a relative newcomer as far as in the bass fishing, not like new, but considering the history of bass fishing, the tube didn't really came into its own until like the mid 90s as far as the flipping and pitching tube. When it first came out and people started getting onto it, I got onto this real early before anyone else did. It was just like magic. I mean, a tube is an excellent lure, guys, for penetrating a lot of different type of cover. And I think one of the reasons it works good, it's very subtle. It's about the size of a crawdad. They come in a wide range of colors. And there's just something about the profile of a tube. I don't know what it is. It could be the tentacles. It could just be the body. But whatever it is, it appeals to the bass. It appeals to their instincts and their reaction to strike a lure. So a tube is definitely one of my favorite lures, especially when I'm penetrating cover. So if I'm penetrating a laydown that's got a bunch of limbs on it, I love a tube. If I'm penetrating like a grass bed, that's good. At flooded cover, this is one of my top lures of all time, is a tube. Just any type of cover that I'm penetrating, because a tube, it slides in and out of cover really easy. Now, I'll give you a couple of different pieces of advice on a tube. The best piece of advice I can give you is use a light sinker on it. I think overall, when you're talking about pitching and flipping, because I've really tried to master this technique, and if I have a strength in fishing, it's jerk baits and flipping. So I've really tried to understand all the nuances that create strikes, such as profile and weights and all that type of stuff. And what I found about the tube is you have to go light. My preference on it is an 1/8 ounce sinker, which is really light. I don't ever like to go over a 3/16. Even with the 3/16 ounce sinker, you can penetrate some pretty thick cover with it. I mean, it's pretty easy to get down in there with it. And one of the things that appeals to a bass about a tube is when you're pitching in some heavier cover is the diminutive slow fall of the bait that the 1/8 ounce and the 3/16 creates on there. Now, I also prefer to fish it without it being pegged, because the line will actually separate from the hook a little bit, and for whatever reason I get more bites if I don't peg it. So I only peg it if I'm fishing extremely thick cover. But guys, tube is just an outstanding color in a lot of different. My favorite colors are probably some type of green pumpkin. I like the smoke with red flake, and a black one. Those are my 3 favorite ones. Okay, the next one, this is one for a little bit sparser cover, and it's one that people have heard about, but it doesn't get the notoriety that should, and that is the Old School Lizard. Guys, the Old School Lizard is I flip and pitch this a lot. I don't talk about it a lot. It's a bait that I use a lot without really, talking much about it. But a lizard has been catching fish for 50 years, and a lizard is a great flipping bait. It's one of the best flipping baits that you can use, and it's also one of the most underutilized baits. The thing about, since the bait technology came out, a lot of people use the creature baits like, beavers and brush hogs and Z-hogs and that type of stuff. And those are good baits, don't get me wrong. But guys, I'm telling you right now, if you've never tried a lizard for pitching and flipping, just tie one on and do yourself a favor, because the fish will hammer these things. Now, another thing about a lizard that I like is with the tube also is I like the slow fall on it. So with a lizard, my favorite sinker size on it is a 3/16. This is a Zoom 8-inch lizard. Also, guys, I will link all my top flipping and pitching baits in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video if you guys want to get some. But I like the 8-inch Zoom lizard, green pumpkin or watermelon candy, black, just depending upon the water clarity, mixed up with a 3/16 ounce sinker. All of the baits that I'm talking about here, I usually flip them on 20 to 25 pound test Seaguar and BizX line. And the lizard is a really good bait for what I was talking about, flipping and pitching it around a little bit sparser cover. So if you have isolated stumps or isolated logs laying in the water, any type of cover that's not real thick, docks are a great place, fishing around brush piles, pitching it to rocks. But lizard is a killer, and it's a really good bait this time of year. One of the things that you'll find out that I found about pitching and flipping, in my opinion, the 2 best months for flipping and pitching are May and June. And this is the best time to use a lizard. A lot of people think lizard, fish are spawning, I want to use a lizard because lizards eat eggs. I've never seen a lizard in the water eating eggs, so I don't know how true that is. But I do know that the lizard will get a ton of bites at flipping and pitching this time of year. And a little tip I'll give you guys, sometimes they like it just like this, but sometimes take these legs and pinch the legs off. And I have seen the times when they're finicky that you can pinch the legs off the lizard like this. It's almost like a snake, and they'll just smoke this thing just like that. Okay, and the last one is probably the one that's probably the most popular and common, but again, it doesn't get fished as much as what the more, popular creature baits does. It's just the Old School black and blue jig with a black trailer on it. Guys, I have won more money flipping on a black and blue jig just like this than any other lure out there by far, ever since I started flipping and pitching. If you can get the fish to bite a dark colored jig like a black and blue or black and chartreuse, your fish will average a pound heavier than any other lure that you do. Let's say you and me go fishing and we're flipping trees or bushes or whatever like that, and I'm fishing this jig right here and you're fishing a creature bait, I can promise you if I get 5 bites on this jig, they're gonna outweigh your creature bait jigs by far on it. It's a bulky lure, it's a little bit bigger, it just attracts a better quality fish. And the size of the jig I use varies upon the cover. The jig is a great lure to fish in any type of heavy cover. You can fish it around sparser cover both. There's a lot of different color variations in it. But in general, I use anything between a 1/4 ounce to up to 1 ounce jig. I've got 1/4, 3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, and 1 ounce. And all of the jigs in this particular color. And the jig size that I use is really dependent upon how thick the cover is, what the water visibility is, what the water clarity is. But anyway, just a dark, full-size jig. So many people on jig fishing, They don't fish jigs like this anymore. This is the Zoom Big Salty chunk on here also. This is my favorite chunk to use on a jig. But so many people don't fish a full-size jig. They fish finesse jigs now. In fact, if you go down, like if I'm at a tournament, I usually try to take note to just sort of see what people have tied on in their boat. Like after the weigh-in, I just got to I'm interested to know what everybody's fishing. And I don't hardly ever see anyone with a full-size jig on. Everybody's got a finesse jig, but these full-size jigs, probably at the top of my list for the best flipping and pitching deal. So anyway, guys, that's the three that I think that are the best all-time flipping and pitching: lizard, tube, and a jig. Caught tons of big ones on it. I can't even count how many fish I've caught them over the year. They still work good. So give them a try. I think it'll help you guys out too. We'll talk later.